Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1067 of our daily content grind, and we are back to the Here's 10 streak of every year of best toys. So, we are up to 2006, and this, I'm sure, is a monumental year for a lot of you out there, because this is like one of the years where Transformers was absolutely exploding. It was the tail end of Cybertron, which means all the good toys were getting repaints for one last hurrah in the line. It was also the year Classics came out, which brought so many collectors back into the fold right before the movie launched, no less. It's also the year that Titanium became a thing. Titanium will not be factoring into today's video. It's also the year that Masterpiece finally decided to become its own line by releasing Starscream. Masterpiece Starscream will not be in this video. We gotta wait a few years to get the good version out there, you know? So, we're popping off. I mean, we still got alternators going as well here too. We've got so much to pick from, so much so that I thought this would be a banger year. I'll basically just tell you all the Classics toys that came out. But no, we got a few surprises thrown in. So, these are the best Transformer toys of the year 2006. And we're going to start with the tail end of Cybertron and the tail end of the Unicron trilogy with a very appropriate figure for such a trilogy. Deluxe Unicron, a toy I don't think any of us actually expected to ever exist, but here it is. The meta behind this is that once Unicron was completely destroyed during Transformers Energon, he starts to regenerate himself, but he doesn't come back as a full-sized planet. He kind of starts off as just a normal-ish Transformer that is something of a round dome tank, as if the planet mode, the round shape of the planet, was just starting to reform, and this is just like the top sector of it that had come back to life and adapted for competing against Transformers. But then you've got all of these different familiar elements. You've got these little legs that mimic his ring. You've got the little muncher in the front for his maw. All his familiar details are there. It's just kind of rearranged, and it's a really fascinating idea to take a design and character like Unicron and actually kind of reimagine him as more of a standard Transformer. This is a banger of a toy that no one really realized would never get a proper repaint. Everyone thought Bludgeon was going to come from this toy eventually. Never did. So yeah, when this is the start, you know it was a solid year. I'm not ashamed to tell you Classics is going to dominate this list because it's one of the most solid toy lines they ever produced. You know, if you're talking like percentage versus how many toys they released, you probably got one of the highest percentages of just really banger toys you could possibly ask for. Case in point, the return of Bumblebee. He's only low on this list because he doesn't have a whole lot of features to him, and there's just better toys in Classics to talk about. But it is a testament to how good this line is that I had to consider Alternators, I had to consider Masterpiece, Cybertron, and even a few stragglers over the course of the year. And I still had to cut Classics toys. Starscream's not on this list, and it hurt me to do that. Bumblebee still barely makes it, though. He is about as solid of a Bumblebee toy as we have ever gotten. I think this toy still holds up. Yeah, the articulation isn't what modern standards are, but he does it so well. You know, he's such a cool, nice-looking modernization of a classic Bumblebee design, on top of the fact that he has a few neat features, like the fact that he's got interior seats that you can see, as well as, of course, the jet ski that turns into a jetpack. I like that play on terms, and I like giving him some playability that isn't as straightforward as give him a blaster and send him on his way. He's a great figure. To this day, I think he is a really, really nice figure if you just want a Bumblebee that is satisfying to transform and see on a shelf. Yeah, really, really good update. Really, really good update, and a welcome return to Bumblebee. I think this one's going to be the controversial one because a lot of people are going to say Starscream should have been on this list because it's a solid toy. It is a solid toy, but I don't think the toy ages particularly well. Whereas there's a lot in Classics that I think does a better job of that. And there's some that I think should be on this list despite being different than what you really expect or want, like Grimlock. I've defended this toy many times because I do think this is a really cool, really fun Grimlock figure. For starters, modern style T-Rex with the horizontal backline rather than the diagonal that the 80s taught us that the original Grimlock toy was. I like the modern sculpting and interpretation of it, and I love how it still comes out as this big beefy take on Grimlock without actually, going to some of his like traditional tropes. Grimlocks all tend to transform the same way. This one does things in a much more unique way, and strangely enough turns him into something of a really good update of Pretender Grimlock, especially with the tail gun, It's a really, really good toy. I still really, really like this iteration of Grimlock. Does it look exactly like the original one? No. Should he be bigger because Grimlock? Probably. But you know what? It's a really solid toy nonetheless. If you're upset that it's Grimlock, go get the Overkill repaint. That one's really cool too. Regardless, fantastic toy that I still love and I will still defend. Another one on the list that is going to be surprisingly low for some people, but this is one of those years where I think even making the top 10 is an honor. This isn't one of those struggling years where we got genuinely okay toys as some of the best because of lack of options. This is just, there's too much competition. And of course, this is my personal opinion. We've got to put Optimus Prime at 7. I'm sorry, we do. This is a really good figure, don't get me wrong. It's still a very solid, fun Optimus Prime toy. What puts him on the list in the first place is I like the modern flat-end semi-truck that he transforms into with the wind main and all that, but I also like the function that he has with his weaponry. His smokestacks and the wind main both becoming different weapons. That's a really cool play feature. I really, really like that. And you can still mount the smokestacks on his back to give him a little bit more of that modernized G1 look that the toy is going for. I really only put him lower because he does feel like he's missing a little bit of something in the articulation department, but other than that, he is just a dead solid Optimus Prime toy. All he's really lacking is a little bit of features, and then I would probably put him a lot higher on the list. That said, everyone on this list is interchangeable. Even number 10, you could argue, should be much higher on the list. So this is just me floating things around. But still, really, really good Optimus Prime toy. Still one I will go back to and mess with if you want one that's a much simpler transformation. It's just a satisfying toy. And yeah, still good today. A big criticism of Transformers Classics is that they just don't age well. And when you're talking about articulation level like I did on Optimus and Bumblebee, you could be right, because they are big, beefy toys, and that is not something for everybody. Doesn't always serve the toy, as well as it should. But what if we went the opposite direction? What if instead of making the bot super beefy, we leaned them down as much as possible? And that's where we get Mirage. Now, when you talk about Transformers from Classics aging rapidly, you're talking about just the expansion we had in articulation and detail level in the later years, just a few years later in Universe 2.0. That said, Mirage, I thought, held up so well. So well. Yeah, it's a very different take on the original Mirage. The traditional shapes are there, but he is much more lanky and svelte, but that ends up making him exceptionally good. For a lot of reasons, especially compared to other Classics toys. His articulation level is actually much higher than the rest of the line. He's got ankle tilt at a time when ankle tilt wasn't really a thing. He's got double jointed elbows. He's got a lot of range in his ball joints. This one got by on posability, whereas Grimlock's got a launching missile gimmick, Bumblebee's got his flight pack. This one is kind of like that Spider-Man toy from the 90s, whose whole point was he's articulated. He doesn't need another gimmick. He's articulated, and that's kind of what they went with for Mirage. As a result, you have a Classics toy that ages exceptionally well, and I think is still a fun figure to have, especially if you have the Crasher repaint. But in 2006, he's ranking very high in the Classics food chain. Still a very, very good toy to this day, even if he's not exactly the way you want your Mirage to look. You could argue that this toy is not as good as the Optimus Prime, and I will not argue you that. There is a certain range and viewpoint you could have that will say yes, the Prime is better than this figure. But I do think it is what they had to do to accomplish it, how well they accomplished it, and the fact that it just plays well, that I have to put Megatron ahead of Optimus Prime. We didn't know at the time this would be our last full-sized gun Megatron. The fact that they managed to make Megatron any kind of gun whatsoever was kind of shocking. He does have to be a Nerf-style gun. Both his barrel and his view scope have to have the orange cap. He has to have these bright neon green and purple colors. He tries very hard not to look like a normal gun. But then he kind of goes in with all the other Classics toys in being a very up-to-date, modern-looking version, or futuristic version, of his original design. And in that, he works exceptionally well. He's got his arm cannon, he's got a really cool look, and frankly, I think the purple and off-white work well. I will even take the green Energon wings. If a new Megatron wanted to come out that was kind of informed by this design, I wouldn't mind it in the least, even if it didn't turn into a gun. And then little things like the fact that his gun scope is see-through. You can actually, it's not going to zoom in, but you can see through it. Or even little things like the fact that the trigger actually clicks when you pull it. Little things like that, and really surprisingly involved transformation, by the way. That's also a bonus in Classics. If you wanted simple, Prime is much more simple figure. Megatron's a little bit more complicated, so there's a little bit more puzzle to him if you enjoy that aspect of your Transformers. Regardless, I think for the novelty and now the notoriety, I would put him, pretty high up in the Classics. But not the best in Classics, and this is where I start getting a little bit more controversial. I know a lot of people are going to put Prime as their best Classics toy. I'm going to defend it every time, aren't I? And that's fine. That is absolutely fine. But if I'm talking about just bang for your buck, toy that I enjoyed a lot for the price I paid for it, the one where I just had the most fun out of the Classics line, that was Astrotrain. And I know a lot of people don't really like this Astrotrain because both its vehicle modes look weird. I happen to like the additions to the shuttle mode. They look like heavy thrusters or a more futuristic style of space shuttle, which again goes right in with the Classics aesthetic. The bullet train, I will admit, is a little bit weird because you've got old school boxy locomotive on the back of it. It feels like an American attempt to make a bullet train. But I think while both vehicle modes sacrifice a little bit, I don't think they sacrifice all that much and still turn out a really, really nice look in both modes. And then, of course, the robot mode that we see here is actually very, very good itself. I do really like the look of this Astrotrain. I have the Japanese one. I have the Japanese one in the cartoon accurate colors, and it's even better. But if I'm talking bang for my buck, it's just fun. It's a fun figure to mess around with, to go from one mode to the next, back to the robot mode, whatever order you want to do it in. It's just a fun toy to mess with. It's satisfying to mess with. And a lot of the Classics toys are, but Astrotrain, that extra mode conversion just pushes him over the edge. I just feel like I'm having fun when I'm messing around with this toy to this day. So yeah, I would say it's my favorite of the Classics toys. I know that's not going to be everyone's opinion, but hey, that's why it is my list. You are free to go make your own. At this point, Alternators was kind of slipping. I feel like Classics kind of ate its lunch as far as like modern versions of original characters. However, it did still have a few very, very nice figures to give us in 2006. It wasn't quite gone yet. And the major mold they released that year was Mirage. Mirage is one of the more complex of the Alternator figures, so I will give it that. A lot of people wouldn't put it up this high, but for me, I enjoyed the toy just that much. Aside from the fact that it's a really, really good vehicle to pick to replace the Indy car. That the 4GT, very low to the ground, it has some similar shapes to the original Mirage toy. It makes sense for why this is the new version of the character. It makes sense. And then if you enjoy an involved transformation, and every now and then, yes, I enjoy an involved transformation. This is a very intensive one. It's probably one of the most complex toys released that year, save for Starscream in the Masterpiece line. But it was just a really, really well engineered and really good looking figure. This one was a lot of fun for me. Again, not going to be everyone's cup of tea. I know a lot of people who don't like the toy. I happen to like it a lot. And this is another one of the cases where I kind of like its repaint of Rodimus better, but that's beside the point. We're looking at first run molds, and as a first run mold, I thought it was a really strong addition to the Alternators line when most everything else, being released for it was a repaint or a retool. This was kind of a breath of fresh air in a line that was starting to stagnate under its repaints. So, yeah, I'm going to defend this Mirage. Weirdly enough, 2 Mirages on this list that I feel like need a little bit more defending because I know they have their detractors, but maybe I just have a type. I don't know. A previous list included the hybrid-style Galaxy Force Optimus Prime, and I cut some flack for that because some of you out there have seen other reviewers actually trash that toy. I don't know what to tell you if I just got a better copy than they did, but I was completely fine with my version. Like, mine felt completely fine to me, so I took really no issue with it. So, I'm sorry. That's just how it went. That said, hybrid-style G1 Prime is a little bit more universally loved. Now, there are some shortcomings to this. I will admit, this is a toy that kind of proved that Optimus Prime really does need to be done at a larger scale to really get in all the features that this one was trying for, but I do think it is an extremely commendable effort and still has a lot going for it. Vehicle mode, okay, that does look rough. I want you to remember, at the time, putting a trailer with a G1 Prime toy was almost blasphemous. It was almost blasphemous. Classics didn't do it. Masterpiece didn't do it until the perfect version. But this was your all-in-one. This was beyond, what you were getting with, like, even a perfect edition Masterpiece. Because here you've got all the different weapons. You've got the alternate hands. You've got the Matrix annex that works. You've got the flight stand. This was the first Optimus Prime to realize if he's going to get a jetpack as an accessory, you're going to want a flight stand to go with him. All of this in a very desktop-friendly package. If you wanted an involved, all-featured Optimus Prime you could keep on your work desk, this was the choice for you. This is your all-in-one Optimus Prime. And the fact that they released this again in Platinum Edition so late after its original release is kind of a show of just how well the toy aged. Yes, like I said, the vehicle mode is a little bit jank. But if you look past that and you see just how much this toy is doing for its size, yeah, this is a really, really solid release. And yeah, a lot of fun if you like your tiny little primes. There's only one toy that could really top this list, however, and it shouldn't be a surprise if you've been on this channel long enough. Once upon a time, I did a Best Toys of the Decade list. And I don't mean the one I did for 2020, I mean previous to that. I just kind of fell in love with this figure. When I first got it, it earned its place on the Best of the Decade, and it's earned its place as the number 1 of 2006. Primus himself. This thing is incredible. So, for starters, we're making up for some of the shortcomings with Unicron. Yeah, he keeps a lot of his bulk on his backpack, but the result of the toy itself is honestly a better feeling figure, I think, than the Unicron. I might put Unicron ahead of him just as far as like notoriety, because hey, it's Unicron finally getting a toy. But when he stands on his own, in 2006 at least, this just felt like it was doing a lot of stuff that Unicron couldn't. It's got the similar level of articulation, right down to all the individual fingers, and he is also loaded with features. The Omega Lock here puts in a lot of work unlocking not only the transformation, but a whole lot of extra stuff. And then you've got, Cyber Key activated things as well. Just all over him. Everywhere they could fit in some kind of gimmick or automorph or spring out weapon or missile launching, they did it. And it gives you so much to mess with and play with on the figure. And of course, extremely satisfying size. Being like absolutely gigantic helps a lot. I think this toy is so well remembered that a lot of people are still going like, where is the Primus to go with the HasLab Unicron? And even though I know we're probably never going to get it, because what are the odds people are going to spend, what, $600-700 on Primus when Unicron barely made it at $575? Nevertheless, it's this nice little chunk of time where, like, we got a Unicron and a Primus that could stand toe-to-toe against each other, and they looked really, really good doing it. And as a result, I have no choice. No choice. The God of Transformers must be the top of 2006. Still my favorite toy of the year. And that's going to be it for 2006, and now is where we get interesting. 2007 is where Transformers goes into its completely new direction. We get to talk movie Transformers. And yeah, the franchise is never really going to be the same after that. But for now, thank you everyone for watching, and as always, I will see you next time.